Tonight, Donald Trump and his allies are working on multiple fronts to capitalize on his historic criminal conviction. The Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee raking in a reported $141 million in May as the trial played out and culminated with those 34 guilty verdicts against the presumptive Republican presidential nominee. CNN's Kristen Holmes is working her sources in Trump world for us. Kristen, tell us more about the fundraising gains and how the Trump team is spinning all of this.
Well, Wolf, there certainly is a lot of spin, but if you ask Trump's advisors, they say that they are just doing what they can to manage an unprecedented and likely negative situation. And as you noted, part of that means trying to capitalize as much as they can in terms of politics and finances. And if you talk about that $141 million that they raised in May, about $70 million they say they raised since the verdict came out. The interesting thing about that is that it is just that hard money, that is just money that went directly to the campaign and the RNC, not the money that went to super PACs, which they say is millions of dollars. Of course, we'll wait till we get those FEC reports, but it's not just Trump's allies, it's also those potential vice presidential picks who are all weighing in, jumping to Trump's defense. Take a listen.
In 48 hours after Donald Trump's verdict was read, our campaign and the RNC raised $70 million in digital fundraising. The American people are upset and they spoke out about it.
This verdict has actually brought unifying our party. Without any question, what we're seeing is never Trumpers calling me and saying, Tim, I'm on the bandwagon now. I've seen donors who've been on the sidelines this entire process now jumping in.
And you're hearing that from senior advisors as well, that this is rallying the Republican Party. But what is not clear is how this is going to impact November. They are still seeing those polls coming out, and it is just too early to tell what this actually means about voters going to the polls.
And Kristen, what is Trump himself saying about all of this?
Well, he's saying quite a bit, but recently he responded to this idea of whether or not he would go to jail. Take a listen to what he said.
I'm okay with it. I don't know that the public would stand it. I'm not sure the public would stand for it. With a,
if they tried house arrest or
I think it would be tough for the public to take. At a certain point, there's a breaking point.
Now, he has told people behind closed doors that what will be, will be. At one point, he said he didn't mind if he went to jail. Those people around him do not believe that to actually be the case. The other thing that he said is he went on Truth Social and seemed to be asking the Supreme Court at one point to take over his sentencing. It was unclear. He said that the Supreme Court must make their decision, but it wasn't clear what he wanted them to decide. Wolf.
Kristen Holmes reporting for us. Kristen, thank you very much. I want to bring in more of our political experts right now to assess what's going on. Scott Jennings, a massive haul, a massive amount of money coming in, especially since the conviction on all of these counts. So what's your takeaway of it?
It's reminiscent of the period of the Republican Party of 2018 during the Kavanaugh hearing, honestly, where you had all corners of the party basically in unison that someone was being railroaded. And so they unified around that. And obviously then Kavanaugh got confirmed. Regarding this haul, this is exactly what they needed because they've been running behind Biden on the money chase. And what they need to do is jack up turnout. Ground game operations are expensive. Finding the kinds of voters and registering them and turning them out that they've got to do costs a lot of money. So this was the shot in the arm they needed. Well,
let me get Maria to react to that. Huge fundraising for the Republicans right now, including Trump, of course. Should Democrats be worried about how this is going to play out?
Well, I think Democrats are focused on continuing to raise the massive and historic amounts of money that they have raised, which has allowed them to already do everything that Scott says the Republicans still need to do. The Biden campaign has massive infrastructure all over the country, especially in the battleground states. They open up an office, once every month, if not more. And so I think that the Biden campaign needs to continue to focus on that. My question to the Trump campaign is how much of that money is actually going to go to the campaign and how much of that money is going to go to paying Trump's legal bills? Because the chair of the RNC on Sunday on this network was not able to answer that question.
Interesting question indeed. In a new, David, in a new ABC News poll, and you've seen the results, voter reaction to the Trump verdict largely breaks down, of course, understandably, along party lines. But among the so-called double haters, voters who dislike both Trump and Biden, 65% of them say they think the verdict this week was correct, with 67% believing Trump should end his presidential campaign. What does that say about Trump's prospects come November?
Yeah, well, those aren't welcome numbers, the Trump campaign, but to your point about the prospects come November, we're still going to wait to see how this impacts the overall standing of the race. We saw a couple polls come out this weekend, and the overall positioning of the candidates, their favorable and unfavorables, don't tend to have changed all that much in the immediate aftermath. What is interesting, though, is majorities of Americans in both polls that came out over the weekend do believe that the verdict is correct and right. And you just pointed to these double haters, the people who have unfavorable opinion of both. This is a key swath of the electorate that both campaigns are going to target here. So the fact that 2/3 of them think his campaign should end, I mean, overall in that ABC poll, Wolf, 49% said his campaign should end. Now, the reality is his campaign is not ending. So again, I go back to saying that I think the fundamentals of the race, we don't yet know how much the earth has shifted beneath it.
How concerned should Republicans be about this?
I'm not terribly concerned yet because something else is going to happen at the end of the month, and it's called a debate. I actually think when these two candidates get in the ring here on CNN and talk about these issues, and that to me is going to be a lot more determinative about where this race is going to be going into the convention. So really, I think the Trump campaign is looking forward to that because I think they believe if they get Biden on stage for an hour and a half, it's going to become clear he's not up to a second term.
Maria, I want to get your reaction to what the North Korea governor, Doug Burgum, who is a potential Trump vice presidential candidate, said about the impact of the verdict. Let's listen to this.
Americans are going to come back to the issues that affect them because this trial outcome doesn't affect them. The inflation affects them.
The North Dakota governor, I misspoke. Apologize to him on that. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, what's your reaction to that?
It's true that the campaign and the election is going to be focused on issues. But I think what he doesn't understand and what people who continue to say, oh, it's going to be all about the economy and all about inflation. And yes, of course, Americans are worried about that. But Americans also have the ability to hold more than one issue in their head. Americans absolutely have the ability to hold the economy, inflation, abortion, and the fact that, you know what, I don't want a convicted felon as the president of the United States. And that's what I think at the bottom line, when people go into that ballot box, and yes, it's going to all depend on how the next months of this campaign play out. And I agree with Scott that the debate is going to be key. The Biden campaign and the president himself is really looking forward to it because they believe that if they get Donald Trump in front of Joe Biden side to side, and Joe Biden continues to talk about the deficiencies and how unfit this president, the former president is, you know, Donald Trump can just throw a fit because we all know that it's very hard for him to control himself. And so voters are going to have that in mind. And I think at the end of the day, the majority of them are not going to want a convicted felon in the White House.
It's interesting. On another very sensitive political issue out there, a security issue as well, President Biden is expected to announce as early as tomorrow an executive order that would severely limit the number of asylum seekers coming in through the southern border into the United States. This is one of the top issues, as we all know, going into the 2024 presidential campaign. How could this impact the campaign?
I think this is an enormous development in this race with this announcement tomorrow, depending on what it is. I'll turn to Maria here in a moment to ask her. Because I think what is clear here, A, we know it's an issue that Joe Biden is running far behind on. It's one of his weakest spots in all the polling. So whenever you're stepping in to talk about and address something that is a weak spot, it's not your greatest day on the campaign trail. That's one. But two, just pointing to Donald Trump killing that compromise bill in Congress on this clearly is not sufficient. The Biden campaign believes they still need to do more to get right with the American people. But here's the problem. It's going to inevitably invite some backlash from some progressives and the left in his own home as he gets tougher on border security. And so watching him, the president and his team, balance all of that is going to be critical. But how much backlash do you think there's going to be, Maria?
So I think you're right about that, David. And the key word that you just said is balance, because what this president needs to do, needs to lean in on, and he talked about this in the State of the Union, is to focus on really strong border security, which Democrats have always been for and Republicans have always wanted to weaponize, but to also offer expanded legal pathways, which we hope that will happen soon.
You know what's interesting to me is that lately Joe Biden has taken two positions right out of the Trump playbook. One is on this asylum executive order, which is a Trump order, and the other is on tariffs on China. Two issues, one economic, one border security. Biden's playing on Trump's playground here.
We'll see the details of this decision by the president tomorrow. That's coming up. All right, guys, thank you very, very much.